Good morning. So, we have been going through the book of Revelation, and specifically the letters to the churches of Asia. We are on the sixth letter to the churches, and this is specifically to the church in Philadelphia. And the church of Philadelphia is a lot like the second church that we listen to. So the second from the beginning, Smyrna, and the second from the end, Philadelphia, have a lot of things in similar. But we're going to talk a little bit about that. In Revelation 1 and verse 3 it says, "Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it, and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near." So the book of Revelation is one that I have to admit humbly that I avoided for many years, because there's so many connotations to the book of Revelation that I wasn't sure I wanted to dig into it. But as I began to study it, I began to get a passion for the book of Revelation. And this verse right here, that those who read it or hear it and take to heart what is written will be blessed. I believe that, and I believe that I've seen that in my own life. This morning, withstanding, because nothing went right this morning, but we're not going to count that. But anyway, this particular church that we are looking at today is to the messenger of the church in Philadelphia, right? The church, each one of the churches specifically have different issues, different problems, similarities, but each one of them individual. And like we've talked about before, as we look at each one of them, you will see that put them all together and you kind of have a little bit of everything. So wherever you're at, whatever church you're attending, whatever mindset you may be in, there's something for everyone in these 7 letters. There's also 7 parts to each one of these letters. In the 7 parts, we have who it is to, Philadelphia, who it is from, description of Jesus, the message that he has for that church, the warning that he has for that church, a promise, and oftentimes this particular one has 2 promises and then 1 invite. There's also some of them that have a correction in there in place of the second promise that this one has. So that correction is something that each one of them, or most of them, will deal with. This particular one, he has no correction for them, just 2 promises. So we're going to go through this and look at it individually and kind of go through it a little bit at a time. Sometimes when I read the whole thing, it helps me to get a picture of what it's all about. This one, when I read the whole thing, it was like I couldn't put it all in one thought. I had to kind of break it down. So I figured that if it was that way with me, it would probably be that way with you too. So I wanted to just take each one of them individually. So who is the church in Philadelphia? This is not the Philadelphia that we have in the United States. This is quite a ways away. But the city of Philadelphia was what they called the gateway to the east. There were 3 major roads, like many of the other cities that we've talked about so far, a very hub of a center. In that hub, though, why this particular city stands out is because of the eastward road that allowed the travel and the trade to go on. But there were some other things about the city. It was founded by Attalus Philadelphus of Pergam. That's where the name came from, was from Philadelphus, and they changed that to Philadelphia, and that's the name of the city. It was a wealthy city, partly because of its location, but also because of the fact that it was an abundant grape farming area, and they made products from the grapes. And because of that, they had a very high value and wealth in the city. They also had quite a few gods that they worshipped and temples to those gods. And so there was a lot of idol worship in that area. Philadelphia had many things in common with the church in Smyrna, like I mentioned earlier. They both had 2 praises and no corrections. So the second from the beginning and the second from the end both have a double praise with no correction. They both suffered from those who claimed to be Jews but were not. And you'll see that in the text, that just like the church in Smyrna, there were some who claimed to be Jews and who were not. And we'll deal with that a little bit more. They were both persecuted by the Romans, and they both had Satan was their real opposition. Instead of being within the church, some who were leading astray or whatever, this particular church had Satan as their real opposition, along with Smyrna, and the promised crown, that if they remain faithful, they will receive that crown. So we'll be looking at some of those and seeing some of those different things. The second half, or the second part of verse 7 goes on. These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. The holy, we often think of this word as being set apart, being in relationship to the divine. But it's more than just being set apart. I mean, there's a lot of things that we set apart, but being set apart for a purpose, being set apart because God has a reason for that. Here in this verse, we also see that he had a purpose and a reason for Jesus being set apart. So, the city is Philadelphia, but he is speaking from the perspective of the holy and true one. This is the definition of Jesus. He is the holy and true one who holds the key of David. We'll look at the key of David in a minute. But the holy, that set apart, Jesus was set apart for a specific purpose. From the very beginning, when he was born into this world, there was a purpose. There was a reason for him to be here. Largely for the fact that he was here to deliver us from our sins. So he would have been called our Messiah. The true part, being reliable. Jesus is said in John chapter 1 and verse 14, it says, the Word became flesh, the Word being Jesus, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. We're going to see here in a minute that this is not the first truth, but the grace and the truth mean something put together. John chapter 1 and verse 17, for the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. The law brought truth. It brought a standard of what was right and what was wrong. And so the truth was there, but the grace part came through Jesus Christ. Jesus represented both the truth and the grace. Didn't replace the truth. He represents both truth and grace. In John chapter 8 and verse 31 and 32, it says, to the Jews who had believed him, Jesus said, if you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. So Jesus was not only set apart for a purpose, but he also represents truth. In John chapter 14 and verse 6, Jesus answered him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. This takes the purpose, that being set apart, and the truth, and puts them together, that he is the gateway. He is the one who leads to the Father. So much like the city of Philadelphia being the gateway to the east, he is the gateway to heaven. In the second part of 7b, these are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. This idea of who holds the key of David is tied to the next part of the verse. What he opens, no one can shut. What he shuts, no one can open. So the description of Jesus, being that he holds the key of David, is defined in that He holds the key and can open and shut what he wants. And not only that, no one can undo what he does. So if he causes something to be open, no one can shut it. If he opens it, or if he causes something to be shut, nobody can open it. If he causes it to be open, nobody can shut it. Made it through that one all right. So, when we look at this, we're wondering then, what is it that he shuts? What is it that he opens? And so, if we go on, in Isaiah 22 and verse 22, it says, I will place on his shoulder the key to the house of David. What he opens, no one can shut. And what he shuts, no one can open. So a direct quote out of Isaiah 22, verse 22. In Luke chapter 1 and verse 32, he says, he will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord God will give him the throne of his father David. So the throne of his father David, that key to the throne of David, the control, is what we're talking about. Basically denoting that Jesus controls all things, that everything is under his control. Everything on earth by the Father's authority. No one else can open or close. So we have who it's to, we have who it's from, and then the message. When we look at the message, we see that in Revelation 3 and verse 8 says, I know your deeds. I know your deeds. We talked about this with Smyrna, and he says, I know you. I know what's going on. I know your deeds. He says, see, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. I know your deeds. I see what you're doing. I see it. I hear it. I know it. And he says, I have placed before you an open door. Remember? He opens things that no one can close. He closes things that no one can open. He says, don't worry. I've opened the door. I've propped it open for you. Just come on in. What's he trying to get at? The next verse says, I know that you have little strength. He says that it is because of our weakness that he is able to show his strength. So we, being unable to do it on our own, Jesus helps us, fills in for us, finishes what we can't do. And he says, I know that you have little strength. The church in Philadelphia was a small church and did not have a lot of backing, but they were very faithful. And because they were faithful, Jesus says, don't worry about the lack of strength. I got you. I got you covered. Whenever we think about the fact that if we think we have to do it on our own, we're going to come up short all the time. Recognizing the fact that it's because of our weakness, it's because of our inability to do it, that Jesus is glorified. It is because we are unable to do it that he shows us that he can do it for us. And that's basically what he's saying to the church in Philadelphia is, don't worry about it. I know you have a little bit of strength. I know it's not that much, but I'm with you. I've already propped the door open for you. I got you covered. Yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. When we talk about the fact that denying his name, we see that there are a big problem here, not just in the church in Philadelphia, but everywhere, is that it's easy to deny his name. In Psalm 91 and verse 14, it says, because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. I think it's kind of interesting that talking about the key of David, he's quoting from David that because he loves me, says the Lord, I will rescue him. I will protect him, for he acknowledges my name. So those who are not denying his name, he is going to bless. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 32 and 33, he says, whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. So once again, he's showing that he is faithful to those who are faithful to him. Now we come to a warning. The next part of this is a warning. Now I want to differentiate here. I mentioned that they had a double blessing and no correction. The warning is actually not for the church in Philadelphia. It is for those outside of the church. And he says in Revelation 3 in verse 9, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Those of the synagogue of Satan, what does that mean? What is it talking about? There were actually synagogues, there were actually those who worshiped Satan. But that's not what he's referring to here, in that he's actually referring to Satan himself, who is attacking, working against, trying to defeat the church in Philadelphia. And he's saying, even those have no power against you. He says, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not. The idea of being a Jew was not a physical Jew. It wasn't the birth Jew. It was those who were claiming to have authority over the church in Philadelphia. There were those that were saying, listen to us because we are the true Jews. And he's saying, no, they're not the true Jews. What he means is that those who are willing to follow Christ, those who are willing to be his disciples, those are the true children of God. Those are the true Jews. When you go into the New Testament and you read that he will prune back the vines and new growth will come up. And he talks about how that is the Jews and the Gentiles. And again, it's not a race. It's not the Jews and Gentiles by a race, but rather by belief, by those who are willing to follow him. Those who are willing to follow him, no matter what nationality you come from, become the vine that replaces the old. And so this is what he's referring to, is that those who are making these claims that we are the true Jews, so therefore we trump you. He says, no, don't listen to them, because that's not what makes the difference. He says, instead, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. You ever felt like you needed somebody to stand up in your place or defend you? Couldn't do it on your own? Maybe it was a he said, she said, or something like that, where you're trying to defend yourself, but somebody else comes along and says, hey, I got this, let me cover for you. Let me explain this. I was with him, I know, I saw it. And they stand up for you. That's kind of the idea that I see here, is Jesus saying, don't worry about it. Don't try to defend yourself. Don't try to argue with them. Let me argue for you, because I know the truth. I am the truth. And he goes on to explain that. In Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, it says, for our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. He's saying, in Ephesians there, he's saying, this is a battle that is not physical. It's not against your neighbor. It's not against the person here. It's actually Satan that's behind that. He's the one that is trying to destroy you. You ever felt like you could, if I just knew that it was Satan, I could stand firm against that. Remember the story of Job? Job was faced with the destruction of pretty much everything that he owned, and everything he loved was destroyed. And his mindset was, why God? Why did you allow this to happen? I don't understand it. His friends are saying, well, you must have done something really wrong. God wouldn't have done this if you hadn't done something really wrong. And Job's like, what is it? Tell me. I don't know what it is. Oh, surely you know what it is. No, I don't. I wish I did. And God says, it's not you. It's Satan. Satan is the one that is attacking you. It wasn't me, and you didn't do anything wrong. Satan is trying to destroy you. here is the same message. It's not the people. It's not the physical enemies. It's Satan that is trying to destroy you. But then he moves on to the promise. The first promise that he makes to the church in Philadelphia is, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. We talked about the fact that it's coming, it's going to happen. That's a relative term, not in human terms, but in God's terms. And for those who feel like it's taking too long, he's not doing it, remember, it's because he's patient. His desire is that all men should come to him. And so he's waiting. He's patiently waiting for us to come to him. And so if we go out and convert the whole world, then he'll come sooner. That's my thoughts. But he says to these believers in Philadelphia, since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come on the whole world to test the inhabitants of the earth. I don't know what that is, and I don't know when it will happen. Maybe we're in the middle of it right now. Maybe we are being tested. But the point that I believe he's making here is that if you are faithful, he will save us from those hardships that are coming. Hold on to what you have so that no one will take your crown. And I want to tell you also this idea of the crown. This is not salvation that he's talking about here. This is a crown as a crown of victory, like you would win at an Olympic race. They give you they would give people a crown of wreath of leaves, or whatever you call that. Corals? Laurels. Laurels. Thank you. That would be what it would be like. It would be that just saying, this is the winner. But I think a lot of times people mix this up with the idea that it's our salvation that would be lost here. But he's saying, hold on to what you have so that you don't lose that victory trophy that you have. And then the second promise that he gives, he seems to say, this is my notes. He seems to say that if you are able to patiently endure, not only will you be saved, but I will make you a pillar in the temple. And this is what he says. The one who is victorious will make a pillar. I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will they leave it. I will write on them the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the new Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on them my new name. So the two promises go together. That victory trophy that we have, you're not going to lose that if you remain faithful, if you remain vigilant here. And then he goes on to say, not only that, but I'm going to write your name on the pillar. Now, the pillars of the temple were something pretty magnificent. And it's talked about other places we'll get to later on, that the names were written on the pillars. And I believe this is what he's referring to here, is that these pillars in the temple were significant because he's trying to help us understand that he has this plan, like from the beginning, that he had a set apart. He had those who are following him and doing his will are set apart for a purpose. And that purpose is signified in these pillars, that he has a plan, and it all fits into his plan. And if we are willing to be patient and endure these things that are coming, he has a special plan for us. Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, he says, "For it is by grace that you have been saved through faith. And this not from yourselves, it is a gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast." The idea here is that We're not saved because of how good we are, and that's what I was talking about. It's not a salvation thing, it's a reward. And he says, you're not saved because of what you do or how good you are, but rather because it's a gift of God. And he repeats that, not by works, so that no one can boast. And then in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 13 through 15, he says, their work will be shown for what it is, because the day will bring it to light. It will be revealed with fire, and the fire will test the quality of each person's work. If that has been built, if what has been built survives, the builder will receive a reward. If it is burned up, the builder will suffer loss, but yet will be saved, even though only as one escaping through the flames. The same thing, I think, is being communicated here. This isn't the salvation, but it's the reward. It's that extra that he wants us to have, that he wants to give us. And he's saying, if you lose that, if you forget what it's all about, he said that part you will lose, but even though as one escaping through the flames, you will be saved. The final part of his letter is, whoever has ears, let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Jesus gives each church, each individual in every church, an invitation. Listen to what I'm saying. Hear the message. Let them hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Why is it so important for you to hear the message? What is it that he wants us to make sure we don't miss? He wants us to make sure that we don't miss the free gift that God has given us, the free gift of salvation. He doesn't want us to miss out on that, but he also wants us to recognize the fact that his desire is to bless us. That's what we started with in verse 1, or chapter 1, verse 3, is that he wants us to remember that his desire is to bless us. If you will read this, if you will obey it, I will bless you for that. I would like to read very quickly the letter to the church in Philadelphia. It says, to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write. And you can follow this in the bulletin too if you like. These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut. And what he shuts, no one can open. I know your deeds. See, I have placed before you an open door that no one can shut. I know that you have little strength, yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Since you have kept my command to endure patiently, I will also keep you from the hour of trial that is going to come upon the whole world to test those who live on the earth. I am coming soon. Hold on to what you have, so that no one will take your crown. Him who overcomes, I will make a pillar in the temple of my God. Never again will he leave it. I will write on him the name of my God and the name of the city of my God, the New Jerusalem, which is coming down out of heaven from my God. And I will also write on him my new name. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't read it all at once because it was kind of too much information. But after going through it and seeing the different parts, then to read the whole thing kind of puts it all together as a whole letter. What was God's full desire for the church in Philadelphia? Don't be discouraged. Don't let the world around you tear you down. Don't allow those false Jews to keep you from carrying on in the faith. Now look at us today. How easy is it for us to become discouraged by the world around us? How easy is it to look at the news, to look at the things that are happening, to look at the politicians, never mind, don't look there, to look at all of these things and we see all of these different things, how easy is it to become discouraged? How easy is it to maybe lose our faith? And we think to ourselves, but I'm just one little person. I'm just part of a small church. What can I do? How can I make a difference? It doesn't really matter what I do, right? But that's Satan's temptation to us, is to say we don't matter. But we do matter. And what I believe that the church in Philadelphia was facing is the same thing that we face. We live in a world where it would be very easy to be discouraged. To feel like, what can we do? How can we make a difference? But he's telling us, just don't lose your faith. Don't become discouraged. Don't fall away. Just stay firmly planted in him, and he'll take care of it. I'm not sure, when I look at each one of these different churches, I see pieces of us in each one of them. I don't know that I would say that there was any one of them that was just, that's us, but there's parts of it to each one. And to me, that's what it's all about, is that you're gleaning from these letters. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to this church? And for me, this part here is the key. He says, Jesus is the key of David. He holds the key to heaven. He holds the key to the church. It's not someone that's trying to tell us that we're not important or that we don't count or we're not valuable. He's telling us that each one of us, anyone who is willing to claim his name, I will claim you. And so he's saying, just keep on. Just don't give up. Don't quit. Keep going. So, the challenge for you this morning, the challenge for us, is whenever we start feeling discouraged, whenever you start feeling like, I can't do it, I can't keep going, just remember that he is there with us. And he has propped that door open for us. All we need to do is walk through it. He's got us in his hand, and he's got us covered.